Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For today's show, it's kind of going to be a mishmash of various things, but I think the theme of the show will be, don't panic. Things are going to be okay. Yes, this show tends to focus on the doom and gloom, and we are going to have a little bit of that. But I think a lot of us are going to do okay. Quick shout out to our sponsors. If you write, if you do anything with the written word, you need to get in touch with Affinity Writing and Editing Services. That's at Affinity WES on both Facebook and Twitter. They're wonderful people. I've worked with them, and I can't recommend them highly enough. On Etsy, Hippie Witch Vibes. Hippie Witch Vibes. They are developing new products all the time. They've announced 2 new products this week. One's already sold out. So, Hippie Witch Vibes on Etsy. All one word. Capital HIPPIE, capital WITCH, capital VIBES. Both these businesses do get the Silverlight seal of approval for superior quality in what they do. And that's really what I base my recommendations off. I'm not getting any financial compensation for these businesses. I'm just recommending them to you because they have a superior product. And I believe, as the little people in this world, we need to help each other. Because if we don't help each other, the big businesses will crush us. Speaking of big business, it's a conversation that kind of kicked off this week's video in my head. We were talking about oil futures and how they get traded around and the price is pumped up before you and I ever get the chance to go to the pump or the tank, or perhaps you still have an oil heater in your basement. But long before it even gets out of the ground, it's traded back and forth, profit is added, and yeah, that's why oil prices are so variable and they tend to go so high. Because you get the last crack at the price. I was also talking with my little girl, 8 years old, and she wanted to know what to do with aluminum foil. And I told her, honey, aluminum foil we recycle. And then I started to realize how aluminum foil is made. I watched a documentary many years ago, and they physically take an aluminum bar and beat it down until it is that tiny little wisp that you use to wrap up your sandwich or wrap up your roast. Whatever you do with aluminum foil, that's raw aluminum. So between the oil and the aluminum, I started hunting down exactly what production is doing with these very common resources. Oil, well, everybody knows oil is a bit of a sucker's bet. You're not first in line, you're at the tail end. But I looked at aluminum. Last year, a ton of aluminum was worth about $1,200. This year, it's worth $2,500. If you're an investor, that would mean you'd made 100% on your investment. You had doubled your money. A good return for an investor is generally about 8%. So I started looking into this aluminum thing, thinking, why is this relatively common resource spiking in price? And boy, when you pull that thread, it really pulls you down the rabbit trail a long way. I'm not woke. I've never claimed to be woke. I don't like woke people. I like people who are aware. And when you become aware of something, it really changes everything. Let's start by looking at aluminum. Aluminum is actually very energy intensive to refine, to mine out of the ground. Apparently the workers need special personal protective equipment to go down and take it out because it's often around poisonous deposits. So it's a real tough element to deal in. I also found out that China is getting out of aluminum production. This is important. It'll come back later. Because China is getting out of aluminum production, that means India is stepping up its aluminum production. And since China no longer needs as much electricity to refine the aluminum, and India now needs more electricity, guess where the dollars are going to be going? Because we always need more aluminum. Despite what you think, most of what goes into your recycling bin does not get recycled. A lot of it gets thrown in the trash. I've always floated the idea of mining garbage piles. Just go through with some sort of a digging machine, separate it out into important stuff like copper and aluminum, and leave the other stuff behind. Sooner or later, this is going to become very profitable. Not necessarily at this point, but in the future, it will be. As I was looking at aluminum, I also noticed that India had also overtaken China in terms of iron production. This is curious. In the 1960s, during China's, one of their attempts at a cultural revolution was to get people to refine iron. And they tried to do this by having farmers build little kilns and stuff in their backyard and make their little bits of iron, which was of notoriously poor quality. At the same token, iron has always been something China has been fascinated with. China's been going around buying rare earth resources, and they're getting out of iron and aluminum production. Very curious for a country that supposedly is one of the world leaders. They're now number 3 in both iron and aluminum production, according to the research I did. I stand to be corrected. Whenever I make a statement, please feel free to correct me in the comments, because ultimately, I only know the little bit that I'm doing research on, and I do research on so many things. Maybe I'm looking at an old article, maybe I'm looking at a less reputable source. Sorry, it's a hazard in the business. You got to go with what you have. Back to China, though. We know China and the United States are locked in this semi-Cold War. There's no shooting going on. There's a little bit of threatening. And meanwhile, Russia is also doing this weird thing where they fly by United States carriers, which I don't know why the United States is complaining, considering they're the ones that made that move popular in the movie Top Gun. But they have this little game of chicken going on. China, of course, is moving into the South China Sea, building bases very close to the Philippines and the other islands in that area, and claiming the territory as their own. China is trying to build a navy to catch up to the U.S. Navy. Now, building a navy is a tricky situation. You can turn around and build a new tank, you can turn around and build a new fighter, you can turn around and build a new gun within 5 years, 10 years. Building new ships, that's an entirely different idea. There's an old saying, naval strategy is built strategy. And it's true. One of the reasons why the Germans had so much trouble in World War II about putting out battleships and aircraft carriers is they only had one slipway big enough to handle a ship at a time. And a slipway is that thing where they push the big ship into the sea. We've all seen it where they push it into the sea, it goes splashing in. I've always wondered what kind of a ride that would be for the people that are on board, because someone's got to be there to make sure it goes right. But yeah, they only had one slipway. The United States has many slipways. Most of them are abandoned, but they still exist. The United States, however, has a naval doctrine that specifically says all their ships must be able to go through the Panama Canal. China is investing heavily in building an alternative to the Panama Canal that will, of course, be under their control. And China is building aircraft carriers. They canceled the remaining 4. They were supposed to build 6. They built the first 2. I think the third one they're going to go through with. They canceled that, and everybody was thinking, oh, they're not going to compete in the game anymore. But then they came up with a whole new design. These are going to be nuclear carriers on par with the United States ones in some way, shape, or form. And they're going to start producing those. Looking at the scale of shipbuilding, China doesn't have the same industrial capacity as the United States has. And neither China nor the United States are using their industrial capacity to its fullest. At the same time, both of them are investing in some pretty expensive hardware. I mean, the Ford-class supercarriers are $1 trillion each. And that's $1 trillion before you put a single fighter plane on it, before you put fuel on it for the fighter planes, before you fuel up the nuclear reactor, before you put sailors on there, soldiers, before you put technicians, all that sort of thing. And of course, all those people have to be fed. So, $1 trillion for each carrier. And I don't think China's carriers are much less expensive. They'd be priced differently, and China is temporarily better able to afford them. But this is again brings me back to what can each country truly afford? It's an interesting question. There has been a significant move by many countries to suggest that we should move away from the US dollar. And I believe it's mostly hot air. I don't think for the next 50 years the United States has much to worry about its currency being devalued. They can pretty much spend what they want because people are still trying to buy their bonds. And the tricky thing with bonds, as long as people are willing to buy them, you can sell as many as you like. The United States shows no evidence that people are not going to buy their bonds. In fact, Japan, China, Korea, all these other nations own stacks of these treasury bonds and bills because they're a good investment. The United States still manages to pay them off. Even though you hear about deficit spending and they shut down the government and all these crazy things, they're still able to raise an incredible amount of money. Remember, money isn't money. Debt is money. And the United States is trading debt so they can spend money. They're selling debt for 5 years that they get to sit on, and then they pay you off at the end. Again, roughly at about 5 to 8%. 8% being considered a good investment, 5% being considered not so good. But this is why there's been a push to keep interest rates down. While interest rates, as they are currently, are in the 2 to 4% range, a U.S. Treasury bill, a Canadian bond, Mexican bond, whatever bond you care to look at, is worth it because they will almost always pay more than 2 to 4%. They'll be at 5 to 10% depending on the year. And this has been the economic magic that's been keeping the entire economy alive. Low interest loans, low prime. They spend money to keep the prime interest rate down. The prime interest rate is the rate that the mint loans money to the banks, that the banks then turn around and loan it to you. So if they keep the prime rate down, and then they sell their treasury bills and bonds at a slightly higher number, people will snap them up. Whether they're private investors, whether they're foreign nations, it's just a little bit of skullduggery. They transfer money to the banks at a certain rate, and they sell their bonds at a higher rate to make them look like a good investment. China, God bless them, not the government, but the people there, China still hasn't really gotten that credibility that the United States has. And China is always kind of teetering on the brink of disaster. Their workers are not happy. They basically get told, okay, you go to college, you graduate to be a teacher, good, you're going to be a teacher. Unless you're politically connected or do something absolutely outstanding, you'll never be a vice principal, you'll never be a counselor, you will be a teacher. And God forbid you're a factory worker, because, you're going to be a factory worker for the rest of your life. That's why Chinese people like to come over to places like Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, you name it, because they can be what they want to be. They can do what they want to do. They can open a business. They don't have to go to a government exemption zone and get permits. They can literally walk into the United States and say, hey, I'm a hot dog salesman. And they can sell as many hot dogs as they can. That's the difference between the United States. That still is the land of opportunity. It could be a racist land of opportunity. It could be a misogynist land of opportunity. It can be a very, very depressing land of opportunity, but the opportunities are still there. And they still will be. The world still hasn't understood this transformation. They still talk about the United States being on the brink of collapse, which it would be were the interest rates to go up. China is seen as this somehow as a predator. No. The United States and its allies outnumber China and Russia dramatically. And nobody is stupid enough to really dip into their pile of nukes, aside from just shaking them and saying, hey, I can nuke you. That's it. They're weapons of deterrence. Putin does not want to be the one to push the button. Biden definitely does not want to be the one to push the button. And yeah, nuclear weapons are off the table. What is on the table, and what is very pressing, what concerns me more than the revolution in iron and aluminum and bonds and all that sort of stuff, is a revolution in people. Now, since the 1970s, people have mistrusted government. Probably before that, too. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you go into the diaries of a soldier from World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, they'll all tell you they don't like the government in one form or another. But the whole Nixon situation and Watergate really destroyed the trust that people had in the government. The government were supposed to be the good guys, and they never were. The problem is when people get into government, they start having to give in to things. Okay, you want that done? You do this little favor for me. You want that legislation passed? You have to support me on Bill 1472, which is an amendment for this to blah, blah, blah. Those are the kind of conversations that happen all the time. That's politics. That's business as usual. That's how you can get Republican and Democrat and conservative and liberal and all of these people crossing the aisle and meeting in the middle and saying, okay, we're going to work with you. Meanwhile, at home, on the ground level, as I like to call it, the place where you and I live, families are being torn apart by their differences. Of course, you've got this illusion of, the parents being conservatives and the young people being liberal, which is, it's not an illusion, it's a delusion. People are all over the political spectrum, even husbands and wives. Well, husbands and husbands, wives and wives, husbands and wives, whatever the relationship might be. Brothers and sisters, even identical twins can be on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Before it used to be, people would assemble based on similar interests. But in the past 5 years, people have assembled and gathered together online just solely for the purpose of arguing over the same thing. It's a very entertaining, well, let me explain this. There's a very entertaining community on the internet. It's called the SCP Foundation. Secure, Contain, Protect. And they have a whole list of objects made up in a fictional universe, and some of them are pretty well written. They give me a lot of amusement. I forget which SCP this is, but it's a communist water and the debating tub. Somehow, this tub has had the consciousness of a American patriot from the 70s transferred into it, and the water inside is a communist patriot from the 70s in it. And they spend all day debating back and forth about communism and capitalism, except when they notice the researchers. And then they make fun of them. This is literally the internet in a nutshell. You'll have two people that will argue the same points over and over, endlessly, ad nauseum to infinity. Then they'll stop and make fun of some person that's gotten 16 tattoos and facial reconstruction so they look like a lizard. Not my cup of tea, but the same token, I'm a very firm believer that a person has a right to do with what they want to with their body. Sorry if that offends anybody, but your body, your choice. You got to go for a job interview, and if you can afford all those surgeries, you can pretty much do whatever you're going to do. I'm not going to bother myself with your choices. But a lot of people would. They would tell those people, hey, you can't do that to yourself. You don't have a right to treat your body like that. It's not the way God intended for you to be. Or it shouldn't be legal. They appeal to a higher form, whether it be the law, whether it be God, whatever they believe it is. Scientifically, it should not be allowed. It's unethical. Everybody appeals to the authority they think is the highest. This is, sadly, the place that we're left in the present day. We're all trying to appeal to a higher authority, to say our way is right. And we're so blind and we're so deaf. People don't compromise anymore. The government is compromising to make things happen. We, the people, are not compromising. We're fighting. Just like the hotness, just like the tub and the water inside, fighting endlessly over stupidity. That's us. We're fighting over stupidity, and this stupidity is separating neighborhoods, it's separating families, it's separating parents from children, it's separating couples. And it's really something that has come together within the past 5 to 10 years. I don't really like talking politics at all. I'm apolitical. I don't fit anywhere on the spectrum. I have opinions, but I don't really fit on the spectrum they want me to be. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a conservative. I'm not any of those things. What I am is a free agent, as I like to call it. I vote for the candidate that I feel best represents me, no matter what they are. But when you talk to people about that, they get insane. I have gone in and declined my ballot. And this one person decided to take me up on this, saying, you shouldn't decline your ballot. Why not? Because you need to vote. Declining my ballot is a vote. It means I don't agree with any of the candidates. To decline your ballot, you walk in, you don't spoil your ballot. You go up to the person, you get your ballot as usual, then you hand it back to them and say you're declining it. And then they'll tell you what to do. Usually it's you just put it in as it is and it's considered a declined ballot. Do not mark your ballot because then it's considered a spoiled vote and it's thrown out. But this person just kept saying, well, you're throwing away your rights and you shouldn't be allowed any rights or opinions. And I thought this was rather curious. And I said, so let me get this straight. You're telling me my constitutionally protected right under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that I have a freedom of opinion is negated because I voted. And the person said, yes. And I said, well, even if I don't vote, I have a constitutionally protected right to an opinion and my right to voice my opinion. Well, if you didn't vote, you don't get to tell everybody what your opinion is. And yes, you do. There's a million reasons not to vote. Are you telling me that people who come to this country and are landed immigrants or are still going through the immigration process do not have their rights that are universally recognized for all humans? And the person said, yes, they're not allowed to voice their opinion. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, here, let's pull the charter up. And I highlighted the relevant sections. And they were willing to tell me the charter did not protect you if you didn't vote. And then I went back again and said, but I did vote. Well, no, you declined your ballot. And I said, yes, because that shows I do not support any of the parties. Well, that means you didn't pick. And I said, that's right. Well, then you didn't vote. And I said, but I did vote. And you can see the circular logic that's going on. This person is so locked into the mentality that if you don't vote, you don't get an opinion, which makes zero sense because it doesn't say anywhere in the Charter or in the Constitution that you must vote. It says you have the universal right, which means every single human being, man, woman, anywhere in between, white, black, yellow, brown, any color, any sex, any age, above 18, depending on your country of origin. But you have that right to vote and have your voice be heard. You also have the right not to vote and not have your voice heard. Because perhaps you're like me and you just don't like any of the candidates. Or maybe you have your own reason. I don't know. There's 7.5 billion different opinions in this world, and I'm not going to start lecturing people on who's right and who's wrong. In my case, I just didn't like any of the candidates. But this kind of divisive mentality, this all or nothing, if you don't vote, you don't get to say anything. By the way, I have voted since then, so I have plenty to say. Just that particular election I didn't. But this divisive mentality of you're with me or against me is ridiculous. As Obi-Wan would say, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Well, we are a Sith society. Everything is absolutism. Another good post I read online was, do you own a house or is that just a boomer thing? Well, I'm not a boomer, but I do have a little bit of property. And I'm lucky to have gotten it. I've said before, housing prices are ridiculous, especially in the present climate. But housing prices keep going up higher and higher. Well, I'm not seeing people moving out of apartments and moving into houses because the rents on apartments are going through the roof. You're charging $2,000, $3,000 for a 2 and 3 bedroom. And how are people supposed to work a job, come up with that money, and put anything aside for anything? Not just a mortgage down payment, but anything at all. My friends did it 15 years ago. And the house that they bought, which is down the street from me, has quadrupled in price. Mine has gone up, and I could lose 50% in the value of my house according to its tax value, not what its street value is, and I would still not lose a penny. That's not a market. These are entry-level houses. 3 blocks down, there's rich people houses, and I understand those houses, like the $4 and $5 million houses. Yeah, that's not my territory, never will be. I like the simple things in life. I like having a roof over my head. I like having some water to drink and some little stuff to eat. But a basic property, and if you saw my property, you'd realize how basic it is, because I don't need a whole lot. You can be very happy with very little. I'm not living in a trailer park. I'm living in a real home. But you don't need a whole lot. But there's so many families that are being stuck. You want to move out? Fine. Rent's $2,000. So that means you have to be making $500 a week. A week. So you can just pay your rent. That doesn't include food. That doesn't include utilities. Although a lot of buildings do include a lot of utilities, but they usually don't include phone or internet. Phone is another expense. Let's pretend you get something cheap, and it's about $60 for your internet. Great. Let's assume that you are really frugal, and this is still possible, and you can live on $200 a month in food and all the mini luxuries you want. Still possible. So now you're making $600 a week, or you have to make $600 a week in order to pay your rent, your food, clothing, gas to get back and forth, or if you don't want a car, then for your bus tickets and bus pass and stuff like that. $600 a week is a lot of money. And if you're making $10 an hour, that's 60 hours worth of work you got to put in. Most jobs are not going to give you more than 40 hours a week because they don't want to be paying you overtime. How are we going to manage to put that together? Well, you got two choices. Either have both partners working and working towards the objective of putting a house together, or one partner works multiple jobs if they don't have somebody else to share the bills with. This is insane. Yes, the 1950s were an awful place to live in, but one person could work and pay the bills, and the other person could be at home and be a full-time caregiver, or they could go out and work. There was a choice. Nowadays, there's no choice. We have destroyed the family and the family unit. And this is why people go out and they're exposed to different opinions and ideas, and they come home and then they get into an argument with their significant other because the new thoughts and opinions don't match with what they had previously agreed on. Silly, I know, but when you're in a relationship of any sort, you're going to wind up disagreeing on something. It's just the nature of things, the way of relationships. But barely being able to afford a living space puts a lot of stress on couples, especially in the past year and a bit when work has not been very plentiful. Jobs simply aren't there. People who were professionals and making decent money were laid off and they have not been called back. There's still people working from home. And new jobs, while they exist, are very few and far between. Ancient Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, the interesting times are still coming. They're starting to reopen the economies. They're starting to move towards letting us rebuild our lives after all this chaos. And to be quite frank, it's not looking good. I casually scan the jobs in my area all the time. And this is normally the time of year where not much is happening, so I'm not surprised that not much is happening. But the interesting thing is the professional jobs are just not there. Sure, you want to be a landscaper? We got a landscaping job for you. You want to be a cashier? We got a cashier job for you. But if you are an architect, an accountant, something like that, those jobs simply aren't there. And the accountant surprises me. It's tax season coming up. Places should be looking to bulk up on accountants. Well, they should have been doing it already, but not every position would be filled. And I'm not seeing anything. Now, my friend who's an accountant did get hired at a new job, so good luck. I wish her the best. So she's the exception to the rule, but I didn't see that advertised. She did. I look around seeing what kind of things are available, what opportunities are available, because I have a very good skill set that's very transferable from one place to another. And even I find it difficult to figure out what I would do if I wasn't in the situation I'm currently in. I love going to the employment counselor and saying, okay, I don't want to do the job I used to do. What can I do? Well, we can't retrain you because your job is considered high demand, high security, etc., etc. Well, that's fine, but I have 10 million skills, I got 10 million degrees, diplomas, etc. What else can I do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And it's frustrating. I can only imagine how much more frustrating it is for people who, for whatever reason, maybe they got their high school diploma, maybe they didn't. There's so many variables in that, I don't even want to get into it. But they're being offered the dregs of the job world. They're out there sweating their butts off, doing yard work, and they're going to be laid off in a matter of months, but they need to do it to make money. The good jobs are not there anymore. We have one of the big three people with a factory in this particular area. They're not hiring. I haven't seen them hire the entire time I've been here. No, wait, I think in the 90s they hired. But at that token in my life, I was in a very different place. So I did not have the ability to apply. I wasn't local, and I didn't know until it was too late. But those jobs simply don't exist, and they're getting worse and worse all the time. For the next 10, 20, even 30 years, we've got to start thinking that we're not in the same economy that we were in. Companies are not providing jobs. The city is not providing jobs. I remember my parents in the 80s were government employees, and they were being made fun of by the corporate people of their friends and stuff because they were the poor people. Then the 90s came and downsizing hit, and all of a sudden my parents were making pretty decent money, and they had decent benefits and everything that was taken away from the corporate workers. Because at one point, corporations treated their employees well. Believe it or not. It was never sunshine and roses, but at least it used to be you'd have some sort of benefits. You used to have some sort of pension plan. Now those things are considered as rare as you want to consider them. So companies aren't taking care of their workers. The government is taking care of their workers, and this divide has come up precisely because the companies want to make more money by downsizing and minimizing their workforce. Greed led us to the situation. Gordon Gekko said greed is good. Well, it's good for some people, the 1% as they call it, but for most other people, greed just shuts them down. I'm doing a little bit of an e-business right now, and I'm negotiating what I think are fantastic deals. And people are backing out because they want insane things. I was selling a knockoff, and I was honest about it. I was 100% honest about it. And I was going to be for $35. And I was willing to drop the price a little bit because it's a knockoff and it's in pretty good condition. I don't know if it's ever been used before or not, but it's something I don't need. It's something in my possession. And this person said, "Oh, can you take some more photos?" And I said, "I want you to know, straight up front, I can't find the serial number on this thing." Now, the serial number is supposedly what differentiates it from being real and a knockoff. And then they looked at the pictures and said, "Oh, it's not original." I said, "No, it wouldn't be original." "Well, I'm only interested in original stuff." Okay. Now, keep in mind, I was charging $35. Do you know what an original goes for? $1,435. What kind of a sucker would I have to be selling a $1,435 item for $35? But these people are out there trolling around, seeing if they can snag themselves this ultimate deal. So obviously he took me as a sucker that he could negotiate with. And sorry, I was trying to legitimately negotiate. And then the funny part is he issued a complaint against me, despite the fact that we had a good business transaction. I was honest and I said, "Look, I don't know if it's genuine. I can't find this particular thing. And I'm willing to give you all these photographs so you can look at it yourself. Here it is at $35 instead of $1,435. And then he issued a complaint against me. "Oh, he's selling fake merchandise." No. Never once did I claim it was genuine. Quite the opposite. I put the warning flag up. I do not believe this is real. It's not even the same price range as what a real one is. But because he's vindictive, he decided to file a complaint. Now, I've appealed, the complaint's been removed, but still, it's just ludicrous what people expect in the modern day. Think about that. If someone was going to sell you a brand new Ford Taurus or whatever the heck it is, 2021, fresh off the lot for $100, you're going to ask questions. You're not going to assume it's genuine and has all the parts inside and If it was legitimate, you'd be saying, okay, who died in here? Nobody is going to expect that to happen. But these people out there are so insulated, and they're used to fighting, and they want to cause trouble. And all they do is just go around trying to pick a fight, trying to make something happen. And if they do find some poor son of a gun who is selling something valuable at a cheap price, they'll walk off with it and laugh. And they can't deal with honest people. Honesty, unfortunately, is becoming offensive. Look, no two people are ever going to agree on anything. I have my opinions on things, you have your opinions on things. And that's only natural because we're human beings. Again, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, so there's 7.5 billion opinions. The difference is we no longer know how to agree to disagree. We can no longer figure out how to sit back and quietly just say, okay, I'll keep my mouth shut right now and not cause a problem. No, we have to turn everything into a little war. You're wrong, here's my evidence. No, you're wrong, here's my evidence. And you can find evidence for anything in the present day. Here's 10 million studies that say vaccines are effective and do not cause autism, and here's 2 studies that say they might. And the person will gravitate to however they want. Me, particularly, I think people need to be vaccinated just at a slower rate. I think we put too many vaccines in at the same time, but, vaccines themselves, they're kind of relevant. You don't want to, I don't want my 8-year-old not having vaccines in her, because children are disgusting. Have you looked at them? They'll jump in the mud, they'll play around in it, they'll do all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's because they're exploring. But for me to state that opinion, some people turn around, you're poisoning your children. What's wrong with you? Well, here's 10,000 studies that say I'm not poisoning my children. Here's 2 that say you are. Okay, I've gone through the evidence. My best friend has a brother who is severely autistic. And it wasn't because of the vaccines. He was just born that way. I stand back and I try to keep an open mind. But an open mind is so rare these days that it's more likely that someone's going to come up and start fighting with you over whatever they have in their mind. Oh, the moon landing never happened. The earth is flat. Yes, we still get flat earthers. This is somewhere I will stand my ground. I'm sorry, I will listen to your evidence, and then I'm going to debunk it. The moon landing didn't happen? I'll listen to you. I don't believe you, but at the same token, I'll give you the courtesy of at least listening to you. And then make a note never to bring that conversation up with you again. But like I said, there's just this divide where people buy so heavily into opinions that they can't allow their opinions to be discussed because it would shatter their world. These are people who read one article somewhere one time, and that has informed the rest of their life. And it's not even that these are dumb people. Economics is a very, very soft subject. Economics majors like to tell you it's a hard science, but it's not. It is very, very variable. Mathematics, hard science. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. X always has a solution. Physics. It's a hard science, but it can be very soft. They're always discovering new things about it. We know gravity will always be 9.8 meters per second squared on Earth. But we have a space station. We're going to be getting colonies on Mars, so that will not be true everywhere. Subatomic physics. They're discovering new particles all the time. Every other week they discover a new particle. And that's a good thing. But it means all sciences are in flux. Maybe it's just a little bit of a flux, but it needs to be there. I personally hate to hear the words, the science is settled. No, you're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to have a lot of people share an opinion. And I respect that. But you can never say the science is settled. We had a mild winter this year, and that's a good thing because with the pandemic out there, this was not a good time to have a long lockdown. That's what I'm going to say. And for some reason, they say that you're more likely to get the virus in winter than you are in summer. Don't understand that, because in summer, you're more likely to go out and be in other people's personal space. Yep, people have you over for barbecues. You go out to the park, you go out to the beach. Somebody can be running by, walking by, whatever. Quick sneeze, quick whatever. You have no idea. But somehow, magically this year, winter became more likely that you could get coronavirus. Okay, I understand. I don't understand, but it's something that I cannot disprove, so I simply have to say, okay, this is something I do not know about. Other people have been fighting long campaigns about the virus doesn't exist. We're being lied to. It was released as part of a government experiment. I mean, they're blaming Donald Trump for using the term the China virus as the reason why violence against Asian people has increased. Now, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I've done a biography of him on this channel, but ultimately I know Donald Trump is only out for Donald Trump. When he called it the China virus, he was just trying to be witty and clever. And nobody listened to that and thought, I'm going to go beat me up some Asians because of that China virus. No. You have raw idiots out there who think in their bizarre, twisted minds that somehow a group of people magically carries this virus. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that went around in the Middle Ages where, Jewish people, where Dalit people from India were all considered to be untouchable. Even though they were clean, even though they would take care of themselves, they were untouchable by the higher classes. Because if you touched them, you would gain their curse. This is the exact same thing, except in 2021. We haven't learned after hundreds of years that people are just people. And I've been around a lot of Asian people. They're the ones most likely to wear masks. They're the ones most likely to cover up. They're the ones that like washing hands. I mean, you compare, if you've ever been to China or you've been to a Chinese market before the pandemic went off worldwide, and it comes right up. There were always people wearing masks there. There were always people with gloves on. It's nothing out of the ordinary for them. They've become used to this sort of thing ever since SARS, ever since swine flu, ever since all these pandemics that have gone on in the past, that they just naturally have adapted it to it. So you have to be this is exactly like the burqa. People look at people wearing burqas or turbans or anything like that and automatically assume they're a terrorist. Now, I do have some objections to the burqa when it comes to identification, but that's just because, in my opinion, if you're asked for identification, you should be forced to prove your identification. If you're going to a nightclub, although that wouldn't be likely, and they ask for identification, you got to show your picture and then they let you in. Because they see your face, they see the picture, everything's good. If a policeman asks you for your identification, you show your face, show your picture, that's what the policeman goes by. And while I respect the right of people to make a choice, I would never personally go after them aside from identification, and I have no right to ask anybody for identification. Nobody needs to identify themselves to me unless they're coming and saying, I need to get into your house. Okay. Are you from police? Are you from the forestry service? I'm not from either. Well, then you don't have a right to be in my house. That would be as far as I could take it. You got a warrant, or are you from the forestry service? Because, quick little note, there's 3 people that can come into your house, a policeman with a warrant, a forest ranger or a game warden if he suspects that you have a legal game, or a building inspector. They don't need a warrant to come into your house, and they can document anything they like and hand it off to anything they like. That being said, aside from identification, there's no problem in anybody wearing a burqa, turban, long beard, short beard, whatever the hell it is. And it's just some idiot. I'm not going to call them rednecks. So not all rednecks are bad. Rednecks are mostly good people. But some idiot rednecks that got together and said, I'm going to pretend it's 1874 again and slavery just barely got repealed, and black people are different, and these weird foreigners from the Middle East are different. And it's just this mentality. And again, it divides us. Not only politics divides us, race divides us, and in an era where more and more couples are becoming multi-ethnic, and you can walk down almost any street and get a variety of people of different ethnicities, you still have enclaves where it's all Germans, it's all Portuguese, it's all Somalians. And I respect that. People kind of want to hang around their own, because living with two people that speak a different language, it is kind of annoying to sit there and listen to them prattle on and, hey, it's my house. You guys live here, but the same token, come on, at least cut me in some of the time. Yes, you're going to be able to talk about me when I'm not around, but that's just the way it is. That's as far as it goes, though. I wouldn't go and hunt down, can't think of anybody, Martians, because I don't like Martians. I don't know any Martians personally, but I don't trust them because I've never met any and I don't know what they're like. So, yes, I'm a racist. I don't trust anybody who's not human. I know a cat can bite me at any time, so how the heck would I know what a Martian would do? It's up to the Martian to prove to me what they're going to do. And I'll be willing to give them a chance when I meet a Martian. We're still at the point we haven't made that jump. We're still at the point we haven't even made that jump in our personal lives. We have friends we argue with, close friends from many years, who are willing to go to the wall over stupid points to say the election, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Next door neighbors, that can happen. Workplaces are being disrupted by this insane division, and we're only getting more divided. When I talked a couple of weeks ago about the human race lacking the ability to unionize, we're lacking even the ability to come together as human beings. This is why I don't think the world is going to change dramatically in the next 50 years. China is definitely going to be an economic and military power. But the United States probably still has another 50 years where they don't need to worry about anybody taking their dominance away. After 2070, anything could happen, and I sit back fully confident saying, hey, this is my opinion. It could change any minute. But right now, we need to start focusing on what unifies us. My next door neighbor and I both enjoy a bottle of beer. That's a good starting point. We both enjoy good food. It's another good starting point. She does certain things that I don't agree with, and I do certain things I'm sure drive her up the wall. But she's still my next door neighbor, and I have to be nice to her because she's always going to be there. And if something happens to me, and my family is out or busy or whatever, who am I going to need to help me? And it's my next door neighbor. And she knows I have her back as well. We need more relationships like that in this world. Sure, you have your friends and you've got your crew that you trust, the people that have had your back in the past, but you need to make that the general rule, not just select people. Working in offices and poisonous environments has made us all venomous, and we're very cliquish. We want to be among our own kind. So while the world is changing, we're trying to cling to what little bits we have, and we don't like to be challenged on the points that we have because we've invested our identity in those very things. And some of those things are very toxic, like racism. Okay, I can understand you want to be around your own kind. There is a tendency in the human race to do that, but that same token, that nice little Puerto Rican lady, be nice to her. Costs you nothing to be polite. And this is my concern, is that we're dividing 7.5 billion different ways as the human race. And that cannot be allowed to continue. I don't think there's going to be a war. I don't think there's going to be... I don't think there's going to be anything world-shattering, but I can see a revolution in the near future. Not a violent one, but something like the Velvet Revolution, where society overnight changes. The governments will change, the people will change, everything changes, and I can only hope the next change coming out will be positive. Because I'm tired of negative changes. And the negative changes are just too much. We have to get out of the habit of digging our heels in and insulting every single person that disagrees with us. Once in a while, listening is worthwhile. Remember the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's still true. Words can't hurt you, because words just bounce off. Now, that's not to say don't stand up to a bully, but most people aren't bullying you. Most people are just simply expressing their opinion. So let's go back to words not hurting us. And hopefully we can make the world a better place. Just a reminder to support the channel, please click on the link below. Our books are available. There's going to be new books coming out in May and in September, maybe earlier than September. Once again, thank you all for listening in, and I wish you all a good day.